Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Spoken Truth Revolution. My name is Matt O'Connell. Hey, really appreciate your engagement and interaction, especially on Instagram and Facebook. It goes a long way. And let me just reassure you that you are not alone. You are not alone in your thinking, as you're going through life, especially nowadays where the government seems to want to take more and more control of each of our lives, and you're feeling a bit uneasy about that. You're not alone. There's millions of people. I'm a small guy as it relates to speaking out about these current events, these issues, dealing with COVID, dealing with systematic racism, critical race theory, transgenderism, gender dysphoria, etc. You are not alone. There are millions and millions and millions. Likely, in my opinion, there are more people that have the persuasion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness more than those who want the government to take control of the minds of the people and to force their will upon us, the people of America. But as you know, one of the big things that is happening now is a lot more, almost half the country has been vaccinated, and we were promised by the elites, the public health, by Fauci, flip-flop Fauci, by the CDC, by your local state public health departments, etc. Just get the vaccine, and then we'll go back to normal. And even before that, as you may remember, 2020 feels like 20 years ago, doesn't it? But if we look back at the beginning, we remember how, and there are many videos about Fauci initially saying in late 2019 not to worry about the virus, you don't need to wear masks, and then 2020 hits around January, oh, you need to wear the masks, and Trump closed the borders to prevent the spread of folks coming in to the U.S. from outside of the country and spreading COVID in the country. In the U.S., and he was completely ostracized about that. And anyone who agreed with Trump was ostracized about that. They were calling him racist. Remember Pelosi and Schumer saying, "Hey, let's go to Chinatown, have a good time," kind of like a little snub back to Trump. They were just really disagreeing with everything Trump was saying. And then we recall how we then needed to wear the masks, right, by Fauci. And then obviously he said, okay, maybe wearing 2 masks will be beneficial. But as you know, when you look at people and scientists who study these types of viruses, they're wearing these gigantic suits that literally cover them head to toe, and there's oxygen pumped inside of them. And we think this cloth mask that my 3-year-old kid's been snotting in all day is going to protect him from a virus. No, it's not happening. I posted recently how we were at the aquarium in Boston in July, and I have 4 kids. I have a 17-year-old daughter and 3 sons who are all a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And so they had a blast. They weren't wearing masks. There were some of the staff members in Boston, of course, Massachusetts, primarily being a liberal state. A lot of folks were wearing masks. We weren't wearing masks. It wasn't required. And so and this is when the Delta variant scare tactic by the media, by the public health officials was in its initial phases. Oh, there's a Delta variant. We got to watch the cases. But needless to say, my 3 boys, they're having the time of their lives, looking at the fish, and they like the coolness of the fish tanks, and they start licking the fish tanks. And there's hundreds of people coming in and out of this place. I mean, the place is jam packed. It's an older aquarium. It's kind of, there's a lot of people. You're bumping shoulder to shoulder with people at times, like a lot of people. And they're licking the railings. They're licking as a dad, hey, stop. Will you stop licking things? Good grief. you do what you can as a parent, but at the end of the day, I wasn't concerned. I was concerned that that it's just simply nasty licking, fish tanks at an aquarium. That number one, it's just gross. But number two, I wasn't concerned about COVID. You know why? Because I, as a critical thinker, look at the data, and children in their age bracket literally have a 0% chance of dying from COVID if they get COVID. They could get something else, right? But and I think they did get a little cold, shortly after that. But they're fine. Their immune systems work. God made them great. Made them perfect in that regard to have an immune system that fights viruses and diseases. And obviously, we're not. We'll get vaccine. They're all vaccinated for all the other stuff, and that's kind of the other thing. So aside from the point, let me just finish the story. So I wasn't concerned that they were going to get COVID. You know why? Because even if they did get COVID, they would survive, statistically speaking. And we need to stop listening to these public health officials that have completely lost credibility. And at this point, they are not looking at the data. I don't know what they're intending to do. The only thing, it's because they're not looking at the data, and I know that they're not looking at the data because initially they said 2 weeks to slow the spread. What was the reason for slowing the spread? It was so that the hospitals would not get overrun. Okay, we did that. And then they said they needed to extend it because we needed to wait for a vaccine. Okay, and then I think the American people were given the public health officials and these tyrants in the democratic cities and states, the governors and the mayors, the benefit of the doubt. We were in this new realm of this quote unquote pandemic, and we didn't really know what to do. So I think for the most part, most people were okay. Let's see what the data, and that's where my position was at initially. I said, okay, we're in unfamiliar ground. I want to see what happens, and we will be getting data shortly. And this is starting from January until about April of 2020. And so as we begin to see more data, we began to see a lot of people were getting cases, and the percentages of deaths were decreasing as more people were getting tested for COVID. And it actually demonstrated that the COVID wasn't as deadly as the public health officials indicated. But yet they still maintain their control. The Democratic governors, you have Gavin Newsom in California, you have Cuomo in New York, you have Whitmer in Michigan, and they did not want to let go of their power. And that's really what this is all about at this point in time. Half the country is vaccinated. If the people who are truly afraid of COVID are that concerned, they are likely vaccinated. Therefore, if I am one who is unvaccinated, have COVID, the people that are vaccinated have nothing to worry about. It's literally a 0% chance if they do get COVID, which there are cases where vaccinated folks do get COVID, that they'll actually die from COVID. And if I am one who takes the persuasion of wanting to be unvaccinated, therefore, I don't care if I get COVID. And everyone else in that realm who is unvaccinated, they don't care if they get COVID either. So here's the bottom line. At this point, with the Delta variant going on and they're now instituting mask mandates, people need to stand up. Otherwise, we have the vaccine. Half the population nearly of the U.S. has been vaccinated. The other half has not been vaccinated, and it's by choice. In the Declaration of Independence, we have the inalienable rights to pursue life, liberty in the pursuit of happiness, liberty being freedom, okay? We have the freedom to choose. I'm going to play a clip in just a few moments, and it's New York Governor Cuomo literally basically saying, put the people in their car, go to the unvaccinated, go to their homes, knock on their doors, get them in a car, drive them to a clinic, put a needle in their arm. You
we have
be
to
the
get
judge.
in those communities, and we have to knock on those doors, and we have to convince people and put them in a car and drive them and get that vaccine in their arm. That is the mission.
Candidly, Mr. Cuomo, no. Absolutely not. Not happening. go take a hike politely, respectfully. This is not happening. And I know there are many people out there. You're smart. You're looking at the data. You're looking at the cases. Do not watch the media. The media is a perpetual fear machine, pushing out fear so they can collaborate with the leftist elites like Cuomo, like Newsom, like Whittaker. I think her name's Whittaker or Whitmaker, whatever it is. The tyrants at this point. There is no reason for, number one, not just mandating masks, because the CDC has reversed its course many times on masks work, they don't work, wear no mask, wear one mask, two masks. Their credibility is absolutely shot. Absolutely shot. And it is not your fault that you don't believe them. But they're saying, because you don't believe them, you're like a drunk driver. You look up Mussolini's video, Gavin Newsom. He was saying that those who are unvaccinated are like those who are drunk drivers, putting everyone in danger. You guys politely, in the regard and in respect and in perspective of my rights as a citizen of the United States, understanding my rights based on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and as a believer in Jesus Christ under Romans 13 and Titus 3, where it says, subject yourself to the authority. My authority, according to being a citizen of America, is the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And I have the God-given right to dissent from each and every one of you, because you are not following the data, you are not following the facts, you're not following the statistics. And the only other reason why you want to mandate anything, whether it's masks, whether it's vaccines, etc., is because you want control over people. And that is the left's main objective. Whether it's communist China or Russia or wherever there is leftist ideology, they will use anything to try to control the population. And now they are marginalizing people who are rightfully, inalienably using their liberty, their freedom to choose not to do something. If you were so afraid of the of COVID and of the virus, you can get the vaccine, and if it's a true vaccine, you will be safe. You will be safe. But if you choose not to, you're likely to get COVID again. But I don't want to speak for you, but you may not care if you get COVID, because you know the statistics. You know the statistics. There's a risk there. There's a risk to get a vaccine that is under emergency use, and there's a risk not to get it and then get COVID. There's a risk in both instances. But you be the judge, because you are, through the Constitution, through the Declaration of Independence, and through the Bible, you are given the right and the liberty to choose. To choose. Here's what I think. If a lot of people are like, oh, it's just masks, let's just, comply. Listen, they said if we got the vaccine ready and out and administered, like, we would go back to normal. This is not going back to normal. Reinstituting mask mandates. Like, at what point, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, at what point will the government stop? At what point will the government stop? At what threshold, if there's, let's say, okay, there's been 10,000 new cases of COVID, we need a mask mandate. So if there's 20,000 new cases, what happens then? Are they going to do another lockdown? Are they going to close businesses? Are they going to shut down the economy? Are they going to restrict travel? At what point does this stop? Because right now, the elite and the left and the media and the Democrats, they are not looking at the data. And it goes right in line with all of their other ideologies. All of their other ideologies. Systematic racism. Oh yeah, there's racism everywhere. Just look. Just look. Oh yeah, black men are getting gunned down in the street intentionally. Just look. Just talk to someone. Just hear their story. The left uses stories to try to woo you with emotion. But if you're objective like me and you want to see the stats to prove it to me, prove it to me through data, they'll say that's racist. Because you know why? The data does not prove their stance. So they say don't look at the data because it's racist, because it has an undertone of white privilege. Don't look at the data with systematic racism and white supremacists in our systems. That's why they just need to be dismantled. Don't look at the data, though. God forbid. Don't look at the data for COVID. God forbid. Transgenderism. Prove to me that a man can become a woman. Prove it to me scientifically. It can't. Don't look at the data. Don't look at the facts. Don't look at the science. Just trust us. Just use your emotion. Just feel it. Just feel the racism. Feel the different identities that you may have from a gender standpoint. Just feel it inside you. No, enough is enough. We need to, for those who are still rational in this society, still objective, you need to speak up. I can't do it alone. Like, no one can do it alone. I'm a small guy trying to do my part, doing this podcast. I get 6 subscribers. I mean, I'm doing what I can. I don't know where it's gonna go. Who knows? But all I need to do is I need to do something. I can do something, and this is what I can do right now. It may be something little, but it's something I can do right now. Something I can do right now, and share posts and on the public square, Facebook, Instagram, etc. But I wonder, and I've often thought, there were people who, we look back in history and wonder how did Hitler, a guy like Hitler, get so much power so quickly, and how was he so influential? It didn't happen overnight. There were constant. It was a perpetual ideological battle at the beginning. And you know what happened? People were silent. People said, okay, like we'll let him take control of this. We'll let him take over the churches. We'll have him take some people who disagree with him. We'll take the Jews. It was a perpetual push and a gradual push for power. Gradual push for power. It didn't happen if it happened overnight, people would notice it immediately, boom, and they may have revolted sooner before he gained control of the military in Germany. But didn't happen that way. It's because people were silent. And primarily, I'm a Christian, as you know, and the church has been silent towards all of this going on. And it's because the church is afraid of conflict. The church of God, if it spoke up, and it spoke up loudly, and everyone, and it's not just the pastors and certain people in church leadership, it is every single church member, every single Christian. If every single Christian walked in his or her authority in God under the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, these issues would be resolved in half a year. I said 3 months, maybe half a year, if we constantly spoke up about it against these godless ideologies. And I say godless because leftism, Marxism, it is a godless ideology. Marx has said religion is the opium, or God is the opium for the people. He wasn't just a one who did not believe in God. He resented God, and this is the left's primary root of their ideology, Marxism, and that is what we're battling. And if the church spoke up loud and woke up and started to walk in the authority given to you under Romans 13 is to submit to authority, which is submitting to the Constitution, submitting to the Declaration of Independence, you would realize in context that you have the right to speak out and to combat these ideologies. But the church has been weak, the church has been asleep, and the church has been in this comfort zone for the last 4 to 5 decades. And I would say my generation and in my parents' generation, those generations, we've been weak, we've been soft. Our grandparents, my grandparents, when they dealt with World War II, many Christians enlisted in the army to fight against the Nazis because they were fighting to free people, and they were fighting against a godless ideology that propped up an individual, Hitler, Mussolini, etc., to godlike status, and that was not happening, and it was a detriment to Europe and most of the South Pacific as well. So unless the church speaks up now, it's going to get worse later, and you have the right to do it. I'm just waiting. If you're hearing this message, are you ready to begin speaking up and not being afraid? It's not just a matter of getting in politics. The kingdom of God should spread in every corner of this universe. There is not one thing in one area that Jesus says, "Oh, you can't expand truth there. You can't expand the love of the gospel there." No, and it's in every single aspect of our society, and we've been asleep. We've been trying too hard to be relevant with a culture that has been going down a depraved road, and now the church needs to wake up and speak out. But now it's almost like, oh, we don't want to offend, we don't want to judge. You're not judging if you're speaking truth. Truth is not synonymous with judging. Speaking truth is the idea of speaking out and debating and telling the truth. Judgment happens after. Judgment is done by God, but we need to speak truth in love. Have a great day, everybody.